The chainsaw sputtered. The creek's blackness opened in a V, and when the water bit my ankle, I realized that the next second would decide whether I'd return home or become part of the forest. The forest began before the property sign, a corridor of long-leaf pines mixed with cypress knees and patches of palmetto that brushed my shins, breathing thick humidity that clung to the bottom of my lungs. It was early summer, the sun high, dripping through the treetops, and the sound of the chainsaw carved a rectangular future through the woods, each fallen log a piece of horizon ripped from the green. The crew had scattered orange flags marking the cutting line to the creek, a tongue of brown water, still in parts, which we called a creek. I was the last in the convoy, pulling ropes, tape, and a warm canteen that tasted of metal. It was then that the world swallowed the sound. The cicadas cut through the chorus, the chainsaw sputtered in slow motion, and even the smell of gasoline seemed to step back. The creek, which had been sleeping in the shade, opened two concentric circles with no wind to explain it, and on the muddy bank there was a wide, glossy S-shaped pattern, as if someone had smeared motor oil on the water's skin. I thought of a loose log, a lost alligator, anything with a familiar bone. But the V on the surface formed quickly and precisely, the water's blade closed back without hurry, and something below shifted the world with the calm of one in command. "Hey, watch the edge," shouted Mark, who was soaring 30 steps away, and the echo came fat without spreading. The smell changed, swapping the sweetness of fresh wood for a warm iron that rose up the nose and down, recalling blood. I stepped back, but the sole slipped in the mud under the leaf layer and my knee kissed the ground. The canteen hit the rock with a snap that sounded too loud. That was enough for the creek to respond. A head the size of a bean pot broke the surface half a meter from the shore eyes black as wet coffee, olive green scales stained with shadow, the tongue tasting the air like reading an invisible note. It wasn't a guess, it was an anaconda. Far from home, yes, but it was. The first strike didn't seem like a strike. The water disappeared, and the silence became noise inside my chest. The real blow came from the side, a whip of muscle hitting my shin, spinning me like a rag doll. The mouth grabbed the mud where my leg had been a moment before, leaving short teeth, turned inward, marked in the mud like warnings. I rolled reflexively, hand searching for a root, fingers finding only the slick treachery of the crushed palmetto. "Back!" Mark shouted, and the chainsaw died completely, decapitated by prudence. In the water's reflection, I saw the thick curve of the body passing under me, the creek turning into a ribbon, the shore a tremor. The tail found me first. It hit my ribs and took away the certainty of the place, leaving a space inside my body that shouldn't have existed. The anaconda circled my thigh, a ring, too, a pressure that didn't hurt. It taut. Its trick is the math of breath, tightening at the exact moment the chest asks for air. I remembered, as if grabbing a branch in the dark, an old swamp hand's advice. Don't give up the rhythm. Instead of taking a deep breath and becoming an easy clock, I broke my breath into pieces, short sighs without rhythm, hiding the heartbeat behind irregularity. I searched for the pocket knife and found mud. The machete sheath was caught on the strap behind my belly, impossible with the ring rising. Her head lifted a palm, the eye measuring me entirely, and the tongue touched the sweat on my face, cold, concluding a sum that didn't favor me. "Rope!" I yelled, and the sound came out low, chewed by leaves and fear. Jeff, who was on the winch, dropped everything and ran with the thick sisal rope, tripping on a root that looked like a hand. He didn't bring a hero, he brought an angle. The rope opened over the creek in a wide circle, landing in the empty space where the neck folded in a perfect V behind the head. The anaconda tightened again. The world narrowed a finger more. Instead of fighting against the ring, I planted my knee in the fold of her body, a human wedge. A breath of relief was gained, and in that breath, the rope settled. "On three!" Jeff shouted. 1. The air flew. 2. The rope bit into the scales. 3. The head rose a palm, stealing from the snake the ground that was water. The ring on my hip loosened enough for my hand to reach the machete's handle. I jerked the blade in one motion and, instead of striking, pushed it like a wedge behind the jaw, seeking soft skin between muscle and certainty. The water turned inside itself. The creek raised a brown wall that blinded us for a second, and the tail swept the ground, hitting Mark's shin and throwing him onto the ground. "Don't pull straight," he warned, even on the ground. Jeff adjusted his body and pulled diagonally, teaching the rope the language of a neck not made to lose. I felt the fiber sing in my hand, burning my palm, and I spun the machete a finger more, just enough to turn force into decision. The anaconda, disoriented, chose the exit that all large animals choose when they find an obstacle without an audience, to retreat entirely, taking dignity and leaving fear as change. The head descended, the rope slipped when it needed to, and the body disappeared into the shadowy corridor between two clumps, without hurry, without a sound that matched its size. The water closed over it, returning leaves to the place they had been before we arrived. We were 3 men and a mute chainsaw, breathing too loudly for the size of the space. I looked at my leg, bruises that the next day would be a map, skin burning in the wrong rhythm but the bones all standing. "Are you whole?" Mark asked, with the voice of someone counting the living. I tapped my chest twice, counting those who stay. 1, we're here. 2, we stay. The clearing smelled of cold gasoline and open sap, while the creek went back to pretending it was asleep, each palmetto leaf vibrating with minimal tremors that only those who almost became silence learned to hear. Jeff coiled the rope, burning his palm, and said to keep the chainsaws away from the edge because noise becomes an invitation when the echo chooses the wrong side of the water, and prudence dictates that the edge be treated like someone else's house, not like a service yard. Mark, still sitting, ran his hand over his shin and showed the growing welt where the tail had swept, reminding us that the constrictor's strike isn't just about teeth, it's geography shaping us until we fit into its map. We pulled the equipment back 2 tree gaps and stretched safety ropes between the trunks, drawing a clear back here line that the whole team could follow even when fear urges shortcuts, because shortcuts on the water's edge are just a quick path to a long mistake. The plan changed without drama. Cut away from the creek first, leave the edge for later, enter with the winch from above instead of below, and always keep 2 eyes on the water and 1 on the sky, because the sun's reflection becomes a lie about depth when haste needs truth the most. The radio crackled with the foreman's voice, reminding us of the protocol for encounters with constrictors. Isolate, don't chase, report, and as painful as it was not to turn fear into a feat, the lesson of breathing short and thinking long was worth more than any rushed video. Even with full light, the anaconda seemed like an active absence, a void that moved the forest around it, and it was under this void that the cutting continued, chainsaws taking turns like a responsive chant in church, each log on the ground, a chapter closed without embarrassment. With each pause, someone checked the edge with the tip of their boot, not to provoke but to remind the body that respect is a repeated gesture until it becomes reflex, and the right reflex saves when the head lags a second. The water responded with small signature circles that are born and die without wind, short V-shaped creases that dissolve as if nothing had happened, just enough to keep the memory of the rope and the wedge alive without needing the full danger again. By the end of the afternoon, a long, healthy pine log had to cross the creek to avoid getting stuck in the soft clay, and that was when the math demanded precision again. Tie it in an X, high cables, slow winch, an angle that doesn't reveal the shore, no one in the water, no heroics, everyone patient like new rope that doesn't yet know fear. The pine slid over the edge like a shy boat, and the creek, magnanimous, accepted the crossing without charging a toll in flesh, perhaps out of fatigue, perhaps out of agreement, perhaps because big creatures also choose their days of confrontation and their days of disregard. When the log settled on the dry side, the forest returned the cicadas to the world, and that banal sound rang like absolution given to those who had just learned the right prayer. At night in the accommodation, the conversation didn't turn into a legend. It became a list. Reinforce rope training, review sheaths and access to machetes, distribute knives that open with one hand, standardize the minimum distance from the edge, and record the encounter in the report, so the next squad reads it before thinking the forest is always the same as yesterday. Someone mentioned documentary stories, others recalled rumors from swamps further south, and the most important thing was agreed upon. It doesn't matter if it came from rumor or camera. If the body knows it exists, the rule must exist too. And when the lights went out, the forest whispered in the ear of the whole team, reminding them that the sleep of those who have seen the water up close is light for a few nights until the routine returns to the chest without vigilance. The next morning brought a light chill and a low sky, the kind that touches the treetops and leaves the light milky, and the clearing smelled of resin and metal, while the creek seemed to have forgotten our names, smooth on the surface and full of chatter below. The foreman repeated the briefing in a low voice, marking the safety line and the order of cuts again, because a rule repeated before the engine starts becomes a reflex when the water tries to dictate the rhythm again. The chainsaw sang straight, the wood split into light fibers, and the air filled with that sweet dust that fools the nose until, during the first break, silence fell suddenly, like a tree sawed from within. In the creek's mirror, 2 circles appeared without wind and died as if embarrassed, and a short V-shaped mark drew the surface before dissolving with the politeness of one who doesn't want a conversation. A clear enough sign to remember that the rope was still tangled, not retired. Jeff checked the rope with his hands marked by burns and rehydrated them with warm water, while Mark adjusted the pocket knife that now sat in the front pocket of his chest rig, within reach of one hand, because survival, sometimes, is about logistics of centimeters. No one posed as a hero, and it was like this, without posing, that the team spent the morning with more wood on the ground and less ego at the edge. At noon, the most stubborn log fell diagonally, aiming right at the forbidden shore, and the physics of weight tried to pull the treetop into the water like someone looking for a shortcut, reminding us that the forest tests what we declare aloud. The winch whined, the cable groaned, and the pine hung suspended in a moment that lasted far too long, half above the ground, half inviting liquid error, until Jeff shouted, "Hold diagonal!" and Mark, with his knee still purple, planted his boot in the right spot, saving not just a log, but the invisible line that kept the creek out of business hours. When it settled, the forest returned the cicadas as a seal of chapter closed, and everyone's heart dropped a tone. That was when the Anaconda made its presence known in the way big creatures prefer when they don't choose to fight. A back of light broke through an inch of water, olive-green scales gleaming like wet tiles, a single slow curve full of certainty, followed by a disappearance without drama, like a door closing without slamming. No one ran, no one filmed, no one pretended not to see. Only eyes met over the small noise of the world, and each one remembered the place of the rope, the wedge, and the diagonal, the 3 pillars that, the day before, had exchanged shouting for method. The foreman noted the time, weather, and position, and life went on with chainsaw and caution, 2 sounds that need to learn to sing together when the water keeps an ancient muscle in the next room. In the afternoon, while collecting the tools, the team set up a symbolic fence of orange tape with simple signs. Edge is not a shortcut, and this seemingly silly warning saved the intern from the foolish step that every edge demands when the head is tired and the hand wants to finish quickly. On the radio, the supervisor congratulated without praise, reminding us that good work is what returns intact and leaves the forest as it found it, minus what was agreed to remove, and that when the creek decides the current, we decide the distance. The sun lowered in beams between the trunks, and for a second, each strip of light seemed like a new rope, ready to sing in the right tone if the water tried to conduct again. On the 3rd day, The purple marks turned into a map, and the team spoke softly by habit, not fear, because the forest understands tone and rewards those who learn without needing to be hit twice. The creek, a short mirror of a low sky, kept its secrets under the warm film, and every circle born without wind was read as a signature, not an invitation, a silent agreement that kept our steps an arm's length from the edge the whole time. The rule became as simple as a well-tied knot. No one alone at the edge, rope ready, machete within one hand's reach, cut diagonally away from the water, and report before the story grows in the mouth of someone who didn't hold the rope for a single minute. In the late afternoon break, when the light turns into butter on the leaves, the Anaconda reappeared just enough to renew the contract. A curve of the back, a lazy S, and the polite disappearance that returns to the world of men, the responsibility not to think we own what merely tolerates our presence. Mark, who on the first day sat with a burning shin, was the first to lower his head, not in defeat, but in recognition of a neighborly presence, a small gesture that avoided the big gesture of someone taking one step too many out of vanity. Jeff, with his palm still marked by the rope, hung the lasso on the tree's nail as if returning a sacred tool to the altar, reminding us that in the land of water, heroism is knowing when to let go. We packed the clearing with the same patience with which we opened it. Flags collected, no trash, logs stacked far from the edge, and an orange ribbon crossing the creek's access, written in crooked handwriting that meant more than an official sign. Edge is not a shortcut. Think before stepping. On the radio, the supervisor closed the call with the kind of praise that fits this kind of day. Entire team. No additional incidents, the most beautiful summary a waterside job can receive. The sound of cicadas became just sound again, and the smell of resin, just smell, because the body finally untied the knot the edge ties when we rehearse death and choose to live a little longer. As we left, I looked at the brown mirror one last time and thought about what remains after the shock. New protocols, habit replacing haste, and a humility that doesn't weigh on the shoulder like guilt, but settles on the chest like a tool, ready for the next day that the water decides to teach without warning. If this story made your skin crawl like a rope singing on the 3, sign up for the next tale. The forest always has one more chapter for those who listen to the right rhythm before starting the chainsaw. If the tension tightened your chest to the rhythm of the blade and the water, sign up now and turn on notifications. The next story arrives without warning, as fast as a strike at the edge of the forest.